Hello, students. In today's lecture, we'll be learning the concept of disaster management. How today's life is full of risk, and what is meant by disaster? So, disaster is any kind of a hazard or accident which can occur anytime, anywhere, all over the world. Okay, and what happens because of disaster? It creates a loss to human lives, property of hundreds of people, and nature. It creates such a huge loss that it becomes difficult for human being to get recovered from it. Okay, that is called as disaster. Then what is disaster management? Whenever we talk about management in in this topic, we are going to see uh, what are the what are the features and types of various disasters, that is natural and man-made, and what are the challenges before disaster management in India, and what are the steps in preventing and mitigation of disaster. Okay, so disaster management cannot totally eliminate the threat of disaster. We can't eliminate the threat, but we can at least be prepared to face any kind of disaster, isn't it? That why disaster management has come up as a recent concept. And as you know, all over the world, so many disasters do take place anytime, anywhere, as I said. So anything can happen anytime. So it is full of there's full of uncertainty. What will happen tomorrow, we don't know, but when we are prepared for it today itself, then it becomes easy for you to face that disaster, or rather it becomes helpful for you. So preparedness, which is required in disaster management. That is what we are going to see, that how you should be prepared to face any kind of disaster and what you can do when a disaster occurs. Okay, then what does it includes? It focuses its attention on appropriate efforts of planning and execution to reduce and minimize its impact. We can't totally eliminate its impact. The disaster is definitely going to create a huge impact on the human lives, right? But what you can do is to minimize that impact. Then disaster management is a process of reducing the risk of vulnerability to hazards, and it refers to conservation of lives and property during natural or man-made disasters. Okay, so the first important focus is to conserve the lives of people and property. Property comes second. Your human being is more important. So to safeguard his life is main objective of disaster management. So this is the concept of disaster management. Then, what are the features of disaster? As I said, disaster is anything, any accident, any hazard which occurs suddenly and swiftly. Right, so anytime it can happen. Disasters are in the form of accidents or natural event which results into heavy damage. Natural events means your flood, then earthquake, volcano. Right, these are the natural disasters. Then disasters cause serious disruption of functioning of society. The normal functioning of society is being disturbed because of disaster. Then it leaves a very serious impact on material, environment, economy, and human life. It collapses the human life of those people who have been affected because of the disaster. For example, if there is an earthquake, outbreak of earthquake, if there is a landslide. Now Marin in Maharashtra was a place where a landslide took place, and the that was a mishappening which resulted into loss of human life and property of hundreds of people, isn't it? So it keeps long ago also, you might remember in Maharashtra, the earthquake, which was Latur earthquake, which was so people were rehabilitated, but that was the black night, you can call, in their lives, that they still remember. Okay, so long impact you can have because of those disaster on the lives of environment, because your hundreds of people, your families gets collapse. You have to migrate from one place to another place. So many things happen because of disaster. Then usually the affected society does not have the ability to cope up to society's vulnerability to hazards. Of course, society cannot have that much. I mean, individually, if you look at the individuals, they don't have that capacity to face that disasters individually. Then disaster management contains plans for societies as to how to cope up with disasters. Okay, so how to adapt, or we won't say adapt, but how to face those disasters when they all of a sudden come. Okay, then disaster management does not eliminate the threat of any disaster, but it focuses on developing the plans to reduce and minimize its impact. This is very important. We can't avoid any kind of disaster. The only thing which is in our hands is to develop the plans to reduce and minimize its impact. Then disaster management builds the capability to face disaster in such a way that its impacts will be lessened, or it will be least. For this purpose, it deals with all humanitarian aspects of emergencies, particularly preparedness, response, and recovery, to lessen the disaster impact. So the government takes all sorts of steps to recover the impact of disaster on human lives, and it organizes and manages the resources and responsibilities to deal with all aspects of emergency which have an impact on the lives of people. Okay, now what is the definition of disaster? A disaster is a serious disruption of functioning of society. It involves widespread human, material, economic, or environmental impacts which exceeds the ability of the affected society to cope using its own resources. That means it affects the human life so badly that society themselves don't have that much own resources to get out of it or to face the disaster. Okay, so another definition is disaster management is the organization and management of resources and responsibilities for dealing with all humanitarian aspects of emergencies, in particular preparedness, response, and recovery, to lessen the impact of disaster. So this is also the same one. You make use of all your resources to to face those disaster, and to undertake the rehabilitation of those people who are affected because of that disaster. Okay, now we are going to see which are the two types of disasters. One is natural, another is man-made. In natural disaster, we are having earthquakes, volcanoes. In man-made, we are having nuclear leaks, chemical leaks. Then in natural, again, we are having floods, tornadoes, cyclones, typhoons. In man-made, we are having terrorist activities, or terrorist attacks, accidents. Okay, so one by one we are going to see. The first one which we'll deal with is natural disasters. First is earthquake. What is earthquake? Earthquake is shaking of earth, and which is being, it is determined by the epicenter and intensity. If you want to see that how effective, or how what is the intensity of the earthquake, then you can find it out, or through epicenter and magnitude of the event. Then it is also measured on the basis of Richter scale. So the first thing which anybody people generally ask, that whenever then it's an outbreak of earthquake, then people generally ask, oh, the Richter scale, isn't it? So that shows the intensity of the earthquake. Then it is shaking of earth, and its impact can be find out through the intensity of earthquake and the epicenter of the earthquake. The higher is the value of such measurement, bigger is the magnitude of the event. Okay, so it if epicenter is very deep in the earth, the impact of earthquake on the surface is lower, and vice versa. Usually, earthquakes result into damage to structures, then landslide and aftershocks. Even after earthquake, also you get aftershocks, or landslide may happen. I mean, there are chances. One earthquake may produce more number of earthquake in next few hours or days. Okay, then which are called as aftershocks. The safest place during earthquake is open ground. If person is inside the structure during the event, then it is better to take shelter under a sturdy table or desk. Okay, so generally earthquake, we whenever this disaster management team, for training purpose, they go to, or they visit to various schools and colleges. And you might also remember in our college or in our school also, whenever we were schooling, And that time also these team members visit and they give you a practical demo as to what to do when there is an outbreak of earthquake. Instead of creating a chaos, what you have to do is, it's better to get a shelter under a sturdy table or desk, isn't it? So these are the things which they provide you with training, so that you can, whenever there's an outbreak of a disaster, you can face it boldly that way. Okay, then just now I told you, earthquake, most safest place in earthquake is open ground, because there is no any danger of being pressed by, because now, and there are no any constructive buildings and anything. Open ground is the best place for that. Now, second one is volcanoes. What are volcanoes? It refers to the eruption of hot molten lava from below the surface, isn't it? It's a liquid, hot liquid coming out of the surface of Earth. Okay, so huge volume of gaseous substances are discharged during the eruption, and which are highly toxic and harmful to plants and animals. So you should never go near it. It is generally said there are live volcanoes also. Volcano can erupt anywhere, anytime. Okay, then volcanoes may trigger up earthquakes. Because of volcanoes, earthquakes, landslides, air pollution, tsunami, acid rain, structural collapse, migration problems. So many things can happen because of volcanoes. And post volcanic problems are more dangerous and damaging. Okay, so and this is another type of natural disaster. The next one is floods. What are floods? It is a huge amount of water reaching land in short span of time, causing land surface to be submerged under the water at places where it is not covered with water. Okay, so water comes into societal places, into our colonies, into people's house, home, whatever, and it goes, drowns. Everything is submerged under the water. Floods are caused by natural events or human activities, or due to combination of both. Okay, so deforestation, these are the things which are human activities, because of which these natural calamities we are facing every year. Almost we do have the disaster of floods in our state. Then the loss and damage due to flood, including drowning, suffering from lack of food, drinking water, submerging of vehicles, epidemics, problems due to snake creatures. These are the problems in floods. So, the most reasons of flood are heavy rainfall, very high tidal waves, and breach in levee or dams. And these are the losses which we come across whenever we have flood. Now, what you have to do when you, what preventive measures we can do to avoid such kind of flood as a disaster? First is keeping the draining system and streets clean. Rainwater harvesting projects can be developed. You can go for afforestation, you can go for planting more and more number of trees, distilling the drains, regular inspection and repair of dam leaves, identifying the flood diversion efforts, and construction of dams and levees and embankment around the city. Okay, so these are the preventive measures which you can go for to avoid such kind of situations. Then tornadoes, cyclones, and typhoons. Now, what are these? These are the winds of high speed, mostly accompanied by rainfalls. Speedy winds, we can call them, and it causes heavy damage to the structures, increases the possibilities of flood, and disturbs the utility services. Okay, so you see, these are so very heavy. They come with a lot of speed. You can identify the speed of that wind. Okay, you can calculate, and from that per kilometer what is the speed of that wind. From that you can forecast what how fast it is going to move across that particular place, or which places are going to get affected because of these cyclones or typhoons or tornadoes. Okay, now what are the safety measures which you can do? This is, you can move to safe places. You can get these ideas, these cyclones or tornadoes, you can get an idea well in advance, and therefore you can communicate it to those areas which are going to get deeply affected because of these disasters. So you can give a pre-notice well in advance, through printed media, through television. You can tell those people, affected people, to move to safe places. And then if these things are taking place all the time in your area, then you can build sturdy homes, you can build basements where you can take shelter, and you can make proper embankment. Okay, then uh, next type of disaster which we are going to see is nuclear leak. Now this is a man-made disaster. Okay, these are not natural events, these are man-made disasters, hazards which are the effect of human negligence or human error. So Bhopal gas tragedy, you must be knowing about it years. So decades ago we faced that Bhopal gas tragedy. Okay, so radioactive material gets discharged into the air, which has a severe impact. Okay, and due to air, food and water gets contaminated. So because of those nuclear leak, what happened, the hazardous gases or those radioactive material, when it gets spread up into the environment, you have effects of it are air gets polluted. Again, you are having in your farms of your vegetable and fruit farms also, they get settled down on those vegetables, and they are hazardous for the human being or any living animal, even animals also, to consume those fruits and vegetables. Okay, so so as I said, that air, food and water gets contaminated because of that. Then pollution caused due to leakages may cause chronic health disorders. Some health issues may be come up because people are going to inhale that whenever they are breathing it, all sort of pollution and all sort of radioactive material gets inhaled. Or if you, as I said, that these radioactive material gets settled down on the vegetables or fruits, and if you consume those vegetables and or water, then definitely that would create some health disorders. Okay, so that are the dangers in nuclear leak, but it's a man-made disaster because of human error it causes. Now what are the safety measures which you can do is, it's as far as possible, stay inside your house, arrange for iodine tablets, do not consume freshly harvested food products. As I said, it's dangerous to eat food and fruits and water, and do not use outside water. And these are the measures you just can prevent yourself from getting in contact with that radioactive material. Okay, chemical leak is also same as like nuclear. It is also a man-made hazard. It's related to chemical plant. Whenever there is a leakage in a chemical plant, blast of equipment such as a boiler, or leakage of a chemical during storage, transportation, anytime a leakage may happen, and use are the major causes of this type of disaster. Adverse effects include pollution, increased heat, temperature, fire, fumes, irritation, breathing problems. Most of them may have, because these chemicals are very strong in odor, isn't it? So when you smell it, it may happen that certain health problems you can come up with, some breathing problems especially. So what are the safety measures for the same? You can pay attention towards safety management, develop the system of immediate alert to all the workers and neighborhood, so that you can make them alert that such a chemical leakage has taken place in particular company or organization, and therefore stay away from it. So you must have some immediate alert system to your workers and neighborhood. Then we're having terrorist activities, terrorist attack. So it's a serious problem for all the nations, and it involves violence and destruction, and that upsets the regular smooth routine of the society, develops a negative atmosphere. People are afraid to go out of their home, anything can happen anytime. Atmosphere of fright, insecurity, skepticism. People are skeptical about it, so thousands of people will suffer either directly or indirectly, and it leads to serious loss of life, property, heavy damage to the mutual trust and faith in the society, which has a long lasting impact. So people start suspecting about what is happening. It is not safe to go out of your home, anything can happen anytime. So that kind of fearful environment remains for a longer period of time, and people doesn't feel safe staying in that area or staying in that city where such activities are taking place now and then. Okay, so what kind of measures are required is that to eliminate terrorism, you require a unity of purpose and heartful cooperation among all the nations at global level, because it's not a national level disaster. It is a common problem of all over the world. Then this terrorism is a man-made disaster whose danger is increased in past few years, and it's a serious loss of life to property and human beings. And it's a heavy damage to mutual trust and faith in the society. Okay, which creates develop a negative atmosphere of fright. And to prevent terrorist activities, timely collection and analysis of intelligence data and proactive prevention measures are very necessary. At I mean, all these things are to be done at government level, where people, people should feel safe whenever they are out of their house. In that way, your government should create such kind of protective environment where your civilians will feel free to move anywhere. And at global level, such actions should be taken against terrorism. Okay, now we are going to see what are the challenges faced in India. For in case of disaster management, first thing is that inadequate early warning system. In any case of any disaster, there is no any early warning system where you can warn the society or people where that disaster is going to take place, especially earthquakes or floods. So it's not adequate. That is what we do have early warning system. If there is cyclone, typhoons, then we can communicate it to people, but it is inadequate. Next is lack of pre-disaster preparedness. Of course, we are not prepared for any kind of disaster. We know how to uh, I mean, we undertake various programs, training programs, but actually when we see that we are not fully prepared for pre-disaster. Okay, if disaster take place, we will run and go for its rehabilitation. We'll try to save thousands of lives, but we are not prepared for it. Next important part is inadequate and slow relief whenever disaster take place. Most important challenges in India is that we do have inadequate resources, and the relief measures which are taken at government level are very slow, time consuming processes, slow processes. And the resources are not available in the quantity in which they are required. Then the next one is lack of coordination. Of course, the coordination between various government departments is lacking, and therefore, immediate relief or immediate help which is required to those affected people, it cannot be reached because there is lack of coordination. Next is slow rehabilitation and reconstruction. After the disaster takes place, everything is being settled down. Now, the important question is that how you are going to rehabilitate and reconstruct the life of those people and the property which is being hampered because of that disaster. So, rehabilitation process is very slow. No any strict policies are designed to rehabilitate them. Then there is no any proper administration, poor management of finances for post disaster relief. Their decision making is slow. How much amount of financial help is to be provided to those families which are affected due to disaster, isn't it? So that is poor. No instruction for pre-seismic period. These are the challenges faced in India. Then we are going to see what are the steps in prevention of disaster. The first thing is that you have to assess your risk both internally and externally. That means you have to take a forecast that what sorts of disasters may uh, you may require to face both internally and externally. You should create an emergency plan where you must lay down that what kind of steps a government has to take when an emergency or when is a disaster takes place. Okay, so that management emergency plan is to be ready first. Then you should be able to forecast the disasters, what kind of disasters you are able to face in near future. So you should be able to, your forecasting department has to be very should be on the toes to forecast it immediately. You must communicate it to concerned people. Next is estimate the possible losses. After forecasting, when you come to know that the particular disaster, especially the natural disasters, not man made, so you can forecast about natural disasters most probably. So if this disaster, when you come to know that, for example, this particular area is going to be affected because of flood, when you come to know about it, what are the possible losses, how it is going to hamper the lives of the people and the property, that you will have to possible losses, you should be able to estimate it. Then you can lay down the priority of disaster management plan. Priorities means which steps are to be taken first. The first important step over here is to migrate the people who are affected by that disaster to safe places. That is the first foremost priority. Then see to it that what medical facilities are required, there are no any chances of any spreading of epidemics over there, so medical facilities should be first of all there. You should see to it that, or and people are not people are in the safe position over there. So you have to decide which work is to be done first. Priorities has to be decided. Then next is controlling the disaster management program. Okay, once you have laid down the priorities and the plan is ready, then it is the duty of the district collector of that area to see to it that under his observation, under his instructions, under his control, the disaster plan is being properly implemented in the area affected. Then he also, another important thing is that non-government agencies do come forward out of societal view to help the people. Many of the people, many educational institutions, then industrial corporations, then business organizations, then especially non social organizations, these people come forward to help these people who are affected because of disaster. So you have to undertake a proper planning of how to seek help from these non-government agencies and how to provide that help to the affected people. For that you will have to lay down a plan. Certain instructions have to be laid down, because you have to control these people. You have to lay down, see to it that all those affected people get the help, required help, necessary help at required time. And for that you need to communicate to these non-government agencies through print media like newspaper, through television. You should keep on telling in news about what sort of expectations are there from society and non-government agencies and how they can help these affected people. Okay, then to organize the disaster management training program. As I said that these disaster management team do visit from especially to colleges and schools, and they provide training that how you should behave or what should be your reaction when a disaster takes place. Instead of creating a chaos, how you should move to safe places and save your own lives and as well as lives of your loved ones and neighboring people. So that training programs are organized. Then next one is rehabilitation and assemble the emergency supplies. So after the disaster takes place, you have to see to it that these people get emergency supplies, especially the food packets and the medicine should reach these people. Then you have blankets, clothes, so many other essential day-to-day essential items get reached to these people, and their rehabilitation has to be taken place. Next important point is to extend financial help that is being declared by the government depending upon how much loss has been taken place, or what is the condition of the loss. On basis of that, government declares help to per family, per individual, or it depends upon the kind of a disaster it has and taken place. And next is to make long term provision. So if long term provisions have to be made, and to avoid such kind of disaster, you can't avoid it natural because they are natural, anytime anything can happen, but you can at least make certain provision and you can extend the financial help to needy people, and you should see to it that that help is being provided in time. Okay, so with this we'll end the lecture. Thank you.